as I project forward to when I'm maybe 60 years old or 65, when will I ever be okay just saying, hey, I don't have to go to the gym and do the same things I've done for 40 years. It's okay doing functional things. It's okay being more recreational. I'm taking care of my heart and my lungs. Like, I don't need that part of me anymore because it's just not good for me in the same way orthopedically. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Mind Muscle Connection. I'm Joe Klemczewski with Tyler Wiebe, and we're going to talk about something that I think, Tyler, we have, we may have even talked about this directly, just under a different title or topic notation. But I had this thought that kept coming back to me this week in the phrase of letting go or submitting to reality. Just the fact that we, through different phases of our lives, go through changes, sometimes fighting it every step of the way, sometimes looking back and not even realizing why we were hanging on to this part of our identity. And I think I gave you an example that was even kind of one that gives a material metaphor. So I'm in the middle of moving my headquarters, right? And it seems like about every 10 years I make a move like this. And so I'm packing up the same shit, offices, desks, things like this. And some things you only see when you do that. Like you pull this book off a shelf or you empty this file drawer. And it's like, why do I still have this shit? But it's, at some point you looked at that and made the decision. Oh, I might need that. I'm going to keep that. And it's almost like we need 2 or 3 steps to get stuff out the door. It's like, first it's on top of my desk, and then it goes into a drawer, and then it may go into the box. And then finally, during some move like this, then it goes to the dumpster. And as a metaphor for these different phases of our lives, it came to me because, of course, I've been to a few funerals lately. I was watching an interview with an actor who lost a child. His child at 1 year old ended up with a brain tumor. Through some surgeries and remissions and so forth, they still lost that child a year or so later. And it dawned on me that when you are forced to let go of something like life itself, yours or someone you love, or an identity. I have a friend who is a quadriplegic, and one day he's living the dream, the next day has an accident and he's in a wheelchair. Like, maybe we should learn to let go of things before it becomes that kind of a crisis point. And I think there are some really, really good places to discuss what it means for people who are super active and fitness oriented. We have performance goals or physique sport goals, because that is certainly another thing that I've lived long enough to go through some transition. So just this whole concept of letting go and accepting change, or maybe even just willfully jumping into change. I'm curious, being a generation younger than me, if you have felt these tensions already.
I mean, like me myself, like have
Yeah.
I?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, hell yeah, I've certainly have gone through a lot of that, and I think we've mentioned it before on this on this podcast is we've both come from a same religious background, have bit into it full hook, line, and sinker. And for those who have maybe not been through religion, maybe you don't necessarily know what we're talking about. For those that have, you certainly know what we're talking about, and it was certainly something that, I look back on now. And I mean, I'm still working on it, but I had to let go in stages. For myself, it was the first one was an intellectual stage where I was able to let go of it intellectually and non-emotionally. Then it was the emotional side of it. And then, now there's a different part where I'm still, learning to kind of let go a lot of that emotion that is associated kind of with that old identity that I did have. And, for a big part of my life, it was like what I considered a main identity of like who I was, who I am, who I was going to be. And so, going through something like that and, working through that processing and that tension and, essentially reworking how I viewed myself from a very base level was quite a transformation and quite something to to let go. And I mean, I still find myself sometimes, having a hard time, fully letting go of that, that hook, line, and sinker of just, what it brings about, the propaganda behind it, and just all of it. So yeah, it still may only be 30, 32, I think. And then and having to go through something like that is, yeah, it was quite powerful, but it was something that I think, we're talking about today and is going to be important to this, this talk, and how we, view ourselves internally and how we bring about that kind of change.
That's actually something that I think so many people have gone through recently or are going through, because Europe is always a couple generations ahead of us in the West. And when you look at Pew Research polls on religion, for example, and you see 70% of 70-year-olds believe in a God, 60% of 60 years old, 50% of 50-year-olds, all the way down, like these generations are rapidly giving something like that up. And for you and me, kind of in the generation where we were born into it, just accepted it and then had to struggle through it. That is a great example. Another one that comes to my mind, one of my clients today, his mother passed away last month on the anniversary of my father's passing. And he said today, there's just never a great time to lose a parent. He said, I don't care if you're 10 years old or 40 years old like he is, like it just sucks because it's such a closing of a chapter in your life. And you, even when you thought you were preparing to let go, like your parents are aging and so forth, it's like, whoa, there is such a finality to that. And I think that's what we fear. Like when I was going through that religious deconversion, it was also very much in stages that was easier to recognize retrospectively. So it was, well, let me just become a little bit more liberal in my theology, and let me just take another step. And wow, there's a whole group over here who believe this. They kind of let go of that, but they believe this, and that's okay. That makes me feel better. And it was like you just kind of climb your way down to the last rung of the ladder before you realize, what am I really hanging on to? But psychologically, I think that is necessary. Like that self-protection is there for a reason. And what I want to get to, because I can see myself trying to talk myself into this. I was a pro bodybuilder. I got up to a 500-pound squat, a 500-pound deadlift, in performative powerlifting type stuff, and that was a huge part of my identity for a long time. Much of my career is built around that. And then I retired, and I just still maintain that, and I was just humming along another 15 years. Everything's great. Then it's like, oh, I have this knee surgery. I've got this neck thing. Oh, my low back's starting to get tight. And it's like, all of a sudden, it's like you start in the exact same way, making excuses to let go a little of it at a time. And it makes me wonder, as I project forward to when I'm maybe 60 years old or 65, when will I ever be okay just saying, hey, I don't have to go to the gym and do the same things I've done for 40 years. It's okay doing functional things. It's okay being more recreational. I'm taking care of my heart and my lungs. Like, I don't need that part of me anymore because it's just not good for me in the same way orthopedically. And it's like I said, I'm seeing myself try to talk myself into accepting that final letting go of that part of my identity someday, but it's like fingers clinging to the windowsill, not wanting to let go.
Yeah, constantly fighting that ego, right? And I think too, like just as coaches, ourselves, we run up to this so much in smaller capacities of people wanting to diet when the context of their life probably isn't conducive, to a diet. And it's like these clients, they have this identity behind it. They feel like they need to do it. They need to have this. I look to have to be themselves and this and that. And it's trying to break through that processing and kind of that, putting this identity up on a pedestal of, I need to do this, I need to do that. And it's going, hey, no, like we can do something else. We can still work towards, your body composition goals. We don't have to do this one thing. We can do multiple things. And just even like, that's been such a big thing lately in my coaching. And it's like trying to, get past that belief of somebody and that identity of what they think they need of like dieting and looking a certain way, and trying to rearrange that thought process of, oh, okay, you know what? Maybe my life isn't ready. Maybe I'm not ready to actually diet because, this and this and this and this keeps cropping up. And so it's, even as a coach, trying to get people to kind of break through that almost parasitic thought process of just like, I need to do this, I need to do that, and kind of going around and round and breaking through that circular process, and pushing them in a different way.
Yeah, I keep coming back to the word acceptance, just a willful acceptance, almost like changing careers. We stay in a job and we think we have to have this job, or maybe it's too risky to go do something I really want to do. I brought this up to my son this week. He's not happy in what he's doing for work to make a living right now. And we've been talking, maybe do this, maybe do this. You want me to give you this contact, or this person's hiring that I know? And yesterday I brought up, have you ever thought of doing something kind of entrepreneurially? Because his big career is music, and he's just doing work right now to support what he needs to support while he's working on music. I said, you are a super, super crafty guy being an artist, and he loves, like, he's our family bartender. Before COVID, he and I together were going to go to bartending school. I was just going to do it for fun. And I thought he would love that. And, you can go Friday, Saturday night, some places, and make $50 an hour in tips and all that.
Yeah.
And I said, plus, like, he's so eaten up with fitness right now. Like, he comes to my facility and trains 3 or 4 times a week, and he's just developing this amazing physique. He's super interested in physiology. I'm like, dude, look, first of all, you're my son. There's going to be some credibility advantage there. Plus, I would make you actually go through getting the best certifications and knowledge. But man, if you wanted to train a few clients during the day, bartend a little bit on the weekends, that opens up so much more time for you to do what you love. And today he messaged me and said, yeah, let's do it. And I'm like, but that's like that letting go. Like, I'm taking a risk to adopt a new identity, and think how much value and freedom there is when we allow ourselves to make those changes that even seem fearful and difficult.
Well, I think it's too like, a general theme of we've had over the course of, this podcast is, having non-binary thinking, not good, not bad, it just life and just is. And it's like, when we have this closed mindset of your beliefs, your confirmation bias, what have you, you're reducing your cognitive flexibility, you're reducing your cognitive ability to be intellectual, to have more wisdom, to be able to adapt and change your identity based on the reality of life and what it may entail. And so, not only, are you, having, less options presented to yourself by closing off, you're really just hurting yourself in the long run, and, becoming that, rickety old man by the time you're 65, kids get off my lawn type of person. When it's like, we can have this non-binary gray thinking, you are then opening that self up to whatever may happen as life, just continues to barrel along. Like, life is not there, to help you out. You have to be an active passenger, within your own life. And I think, closing yourself off, you're essentially putting yourself as just a passenger and just someone who's going to watch and not take, an active participation in your life and have that, willing flexibility. Not to say that it's going to be easy. Like, a lot of our beliefs and our identities, and, we cling on to these are, modes of being for us. And so it certainly is never going to be easy, but just even having that openness is going to make it that much easier, because you already have left kind of space within yourself and in this, arena that you're in to change and to be adaptive and to be flexible. And that, yeah, if you can, participate yourself, well, guess what? You're going to set yourself up, for a lot more success, with whatever you might be doing.
We mentioned this a couple episodes ago, but as I think about some of the recent funerals I've been to and that process, and again, I have a friend of mine who just lost his wife. I have a brand new client of mine who just lost his wife, and long battles with cancer. And that kind of weird question that you ask sometimes, like, would you rather just like die suddenly and never even know, or would you like to know, like, you have this diagnosis and you have a year to live and now you can wrap up your life on your own terms. I think of that because of my weird OCD kind of personality, like, that simplification and taking care of business. And I do want to end things on my own terms. So even as I look forward to an exit strategy for my business and how I want to simplify things and the way I'm working on my house as a kind of an empty nest thing, and like, what do we want to do to move into this next phase? There are all these elements of preparing for those next phases, and that puts you in that position of, but do I want to, and how do I want to, and do I feel a loss of control, which is that loss of ego, and I'm being forced to simplify, or am I truly embracing it? And that's the person I want to be. I just don't know if you can truly cognitively control that. Like, you become who you become, and maybe you accept it, maybe you don't, but how much control of that do you really have? And now we're kind of brushing up against determinism. But I certainly want to be that person who lives each part of those transitions with the assurance that I'm in control in some way, not because ego is forcing me to feel that way, but because I want to be okay with accepting those changes.
Yeah, it's the full, realization that that is going to happen. And you can either I think, what a lot of people do, let's just say, as death, like, as there's my grandpa-in-law, I guess you would call him. I don't know that side very well. He's basically in palliative care, end of life. And we got together, and there was, a lot of Bible verses being spouted about faith and hope and all of this kind of thing. And it just kind of made me think of, like, as soon as something like this is presented, how quickly we retreat to those things that make us feel better and make us feel good and make us feel okay about the death that is occurring. And it can be so hard to face that reality of just death and nothingness and all of that. And yeah, it's you're presented with those two options, like, knowing that it's going to happen. One, are you going to stick your head in the sand? Or two, are you going to be open and okay with that? May never be 100%, like you said, cognitively okay with that thought process and that end time, but it's going, again, to open up those options to you. It's going to keep you an active participator in your life. And I think you're going to probably find a lot more happiness, whatever that is, through that type of process, than just closing yourself off and just relying on that confirmation bias of whatever's in front of you and whatever you're the most comfortable with, on those deep belief levels.
Well, you said that you may not be able to perfectly cognitively accept it. And I want to think that you can, because I've seen people, it's almost, getting into Zen Buddhism and all that, but I've seen people do it well. And like I told a client today, having the same conversation, I see myself at 60 or 65 years old, that I've said this, that I'm going to be 145, 150 pound guy with a lot less muscle because I can't squat and deadlift 500 pounds anymore. And I'm going to be active, and I'm going to intentionally be healthy because I know being lighter and more functional is better for the aging process. And for other people who may have to take care of you someday, I've been in medicine and do that work with people. And so I am, as I said, trying to plant that seed in my head so that I know that, like, that is my goal. It's okay to be that person. It's okay to go through these transitions, because instead of the regret that I can't do what I did when I was 30, I want to say, well, that was okay. That was meaningful to me then. It gave me the life I wanted. This is the normal process of life on the other side. And that's okay. I love it. I can love everything I still do now, just like I loved what I did then, even though it's different. And like I said, Tyler, I've seen people do that, even just transitioning from an active bodybuilding life where they make that very hard decision to retire from competition. And what's life going to be like without that identity any longer? And then they realize like there is life after the stage, life after your baseball career, or this or that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm trying to talk myself into it to prepare myself and to be okay with it. Because as
Yeah.
somebody who loves control, I want to know that I have to relinquish it, and I'd rather do it on my own terms happily than to be that angry old person who lives in yesterday all the time.
You're always going for the glory days. You still got your Letterman jacket on at 60. Hey, I threw that pass. Yeah, you don't want to be that guy.
Right, right. Well, it's I love your first reaction to this question where you're like, "What are you kidding me? Hell yeah, I've already felt this."
Yeah, yeah,
So, but some people
totally.
just don't realize it. Some people don't realize that they are going through those tough times, and they just aren't even aware. It just expresses itself as pain and frustration.
Yeah, and I mean, and I think this is all like maybe this is could be just religion, but I'm sure it's with other things too. But it's like it's a feedback loop. Well, you feel bad and shitty. Well, guess what? It's because you haven't prayed enough, or you haven't done enough Bible study, or this and that and this and that. Like I remember, just thinking back on my time when I was in Sweden at a Bible school for 9 months, and I just remember all these people being so despaired that they weren't hearing God's voice. God has been so quiet lately to me. And back then it was like, oh yeah, like they're going through that struggle or this and that. And you look back on it now and it's just, man, like that confirmation bias is strong. Like, and just how willfully we blind ourselves to what is reality and to what we want reality to be. And I think a lot of where that tension comes from, like I remember being there for 9 months and just having I mean, I was going through some seasonal depression. If you've never been in Sweden, it gets dark at like 2 p.m
Mm.
about 6 months out of the year, so there was some of that as well. But there was so much anger and frustration and confusion and all of this like emotional. And I thought I wasn't a good Christian. And I think it was just intellectual reality was brushing up against what I wanted my reality to be. And it took years to kind of really work through that and be open to the idea of, hey, maybe there is no God, maybe there shouldn't be religion, etc. And that still took many years to really work out and become more emotionally sound, in a more emotionally level. And it's still something that I'm working on, but yeah, I totally get that.
Well, and if it's not a formal religion, it's a religious replacement for it. So, for example, my coping mechanism is distraction and busyness and in stimulation, intellectual stimulation. So that distracts me from the things I don't want to have to face. And so, we all are at different levels and have different perspectives and personality types to feel these things and then process them accordingly. And so I just think it's the most important thing to be aware and to say, wow, do I actually have some blind spots? Am I facing this? Are there some of these fears or frustrations I'm just pushing away instead of thinking through them? So it's why we do this podcast, and it's why I appreciate you doing this with me. It's one of my favorite things because it makes us stop and think on different levels.
Totally.
All right,
That's
man.
how we
Well, thanks.
grow.
Thank you, Tyler, and we will see you guys next time in the Mind Muscle Connection.